Hello, this is Vince Cochin. Welcome to my walkthrough of how to get going with your GRE studying. So a lot of my clients will go to my webpage and still have questions, so I'm going to walk you through a few things here just so you have an idea of how to get started. There's a lot to do. All right, so you can see here that I have created a GRE video series to teach you the same techniques I teach my clients. Don't really buy this until you've taken the first computer practice test, because I use questions from that test in my demonstrations. But once you've taken that first ETS computer practice test that you can download from their website, the ETS GRE website, then go ahead and buy it if you are not going to work with me. It'll teach you some technique. Okay, so step one, get a baseline score. You can find one here, and that link is going to send you to the ETS GRE website where you can download the software that contains real GREs. You don't have to take the baseline test right away. You can wait until you're up to speed a little, but you're going to want to take it in the earlier part of your prep. Then you can set a realistic score goal and start planning and scheduling your time. Really important to actually schedule in the time you want to study. A lot of people have trouble fitting in study time. Best way I think to do it is to put it in a specific time slot on a planner. Okay, so step 3, foundational skills. Vocab, you can get my vocab book if you like, but you don't need mine. You can always use words from anywhere that you don't know, but just make sure you're learning at least about 5 words a day. I have a link to a method to make flashcards, which is the best way I think to actually remember words if you make a really good flashcard. And then I have a chart, I'll just show you that. That shows you how to organize your studying. So this chart here, once it loads, you're going to see that day 1 you study 5 words, day 2 you study 5 different words, day 3 you study 5 different words, and then on day 4 you're studying 5 new words again, but now you're reviewing the first 5. You're not going to review those first 5 words again until double the amount of days have passed on day 11. Now the reason I have it staggered in this particular way is that every time you review, you're going to be learning the words better. So you don't really need to study everything every day. Space it out, double the time every time. In this chart, will keep you organized. So you also want to look up word roots. I have a link to a page that'll teach you those. Now for reading comprehension, I like to say 30 minutes a day, whatever you have time for really. And here are some great sources. I particularly like The Economist. You want to read about all kinds of different topics because your background knowledge of a topic is important in the comprehension of that topic. So if you get a passage about like architecture, helps if you've read something about architecture at least once in your life, and you'll have just a bit of an easier time understanding it. Not to mention reading comprehension will also increase your vocabulary. So now we're coming to math. So you have a couple options here in my view. You can either use the Manhattan GRE books if you have more time. They're pretty comprehensive, but there are a lot of them. Or you can use the Cliffs Notes Math for standardized tests. Make sure that you don't buy the Cliffs Notes Math for the GRE. It's the Cliffs Notes Math for standardized test. I have a link right here for you because the Cliffs Notes Math for the GRE is really not that great, and I really like this book better. You're also going to use the math review in the official guide, so that link will send you to the official guide to the GRE. I have a really basic math course if you like watching videos, and then I have free GRE videos too explaining some concepts. So I would just pick and choose. Do I want to buy a shorter version that I can realistically get through, or do I want to go all out and do the most comprehensive version? I think it depends again on your sort of time frame. So one quick thing about math before I go on, I've made a spreadsheet that classifies the math questions. Sorry for that. That was a terrible highlight job by me. It's hard to read. But right here, I've also made a spreadsheet that classifies the math questions. The official guide. Why did I do that? Well, when you learn a concept, let's say percents, then you want to go practice with the real GRE questions. The math books here are going to be at a lower level of complexity than the real test. Once you've learned the concept at a lower level, practice it at the GRE level. And that spreadsheet will keep you organized. Okay, moving back to foundational skills. Essays. Read chapter 2 in the ETS guide. Also, that guide will have, the official guide that is, a ton of sample essays and commentary. The verbal practice book will also have some new sample essays and commentary. Read all of them and analyze them. They are the best clues you can ever get to what the GRE is looking for, because they tell you, they show you, and they tell you exactly what got a good score. Then go to these links, the topics for the issue essay and the topics for the argument essay. Those are published topics of any topic they could ever give you in the test. You can read them all. You can brainstorm as many as you can. That'll get you going with that. Then, of course, you can start writing essays. But even just brainstorming them all at least gets you familiar with a lot of what they're going to cover. If you're, again, going all out and you want to practice logic questions, the official guide for GMAT Verbal, the critical reasoning section, is great practice for GRE logic questions. Okay, moving on. I already told you I have technique videos. I will also be happy to tutor you in that regard. That's kind of where I add the most value, I think. And of course, I tutor via Skype for those of you who don't live here in San Diego. Okay, practice materials. We've already talked about the math workbooks, but in terms of practicing the GRE, we want to use the official materials for sure. The questions are just more complex and more nuanced and more, they play by the same rules, which is really important as the real GRE is going to play by. So the official guide, then there's a verbal practice book and a quantitative practice book. I have a YouTube channel, and I explain most of the questions in the quantitative book on there. If you get stuck on one, try your best first and then watch the video. You know, don't just watch it because you're the first chance you get, because you want to build your math skill by struggling and figuring things out rather than having somebody just tell you how to do it. So a couple thoughts about practice. First, don't worry about your timing. Foundational practice is best done untimed. This is getting good at the test. Then once you know what you're doing, practice timed. I like Manhattan's GRE tests. They're not, you know, they don't really act and behave exactly like the real GRE, but they're better than nothing, and you need more than 2 practice tests, I think, if you're serious about your prep. So if you buy one of their GRE strategy guides, you know, that comprehensive math option I talked about earlier, you will have access to 6 computer tests. Now, eventually you're going to take the ETS tests kind of, you know, probably toward the end of your prep, because those are the best indications of what the real GRE will do. They're essentially real GREs. A couple notes: always circle stuff you guessed on so you can make sure you actually understand it. Don't write in your books. When you review a question, it should be blank so you can't, you know, use any advantage to figuring it out. Now, the final step before we're done, let's talk a little bit about review. Reviewing is so important that I can't mention it enough. Most students never review the right way, in my experience. So what I mean by that is review the stuff we covered in tutoring if you're tutoring with me. But let's say you're just looking at a question. If you got it right, I will bet that most students will never look at the question, you know, in depth again, because they got it right. Why should they look at it? However, you don't want to just get things right if you want to be good at the GRE. You want to be able to explain them and be confident that you know exactly how that question works and why the answer choice that you picked is correct. So you want to try to identify what was tested, ideal technique, and takeaways for any question, whether you get it right or wrong. Now, I know that's time consuming. It takes more mental energy than just getting a question right, but it's so valuable because it's going to make you better at the test. Now, of course, you're going to have to go back and review things like concepts and techniques and practice, but this hopefully gives you a little bit of an idea of your overall perspective, and it makes getting started on some of this stuff maybe a little bit easier. Try to work on a little bit of everything every week. If you have more questions on how to get going, feel free to schedule a session with me. But hopefully for a bunch of you, this is going to answer the questions that you ask me when we talk in terms of how to get going. Good luck with your GRE studies.